I did. I thought Loken and Ryland were going to get together before anyone else, but the fact that both the science officers get down like they do in this chapter is hilarious. Dubois and Shapiro, funny as hell. Hello and welcome back to the couch. We saved you a seat. My name is Luke, and today we're checking out Chapter 7 of Project Hail Mary. You guys know the deal. I saw the trailer, jumped in the book, wanted to do a reaction of each of the chapters. About halfway through the book, it's been a good time. If you want to follow along, go buy it on Amazon. There's a link in the description. But if you're ready to go, let's hit it. Okay, at the beginning of this chapter, we are solving problems. We are doing good things. To me, first impression, this is the most overtly positive, funny, interesting, hilarious chapter that we've had so far, which stinks because I really like Strat and she's not in this chapter, but regardless. So at the beginning, there's one of my more favorite parts of the entire book is actually right there at the beginning when Ryland and Rocky have a culture conversation or an unspoken rule about culture. And I love that one of them bends to the other one when they're like, hey, it's my culture. Like, sorry. Man, having roommates sucks sometimes, you know. Shout out to Ed King. I don't know where you're at, Ed King, but I used to work with this man. He's a wise old man. And he said, the hardest thing you'll ever do is share a room with somebody else. And I love that, like, Ryland's been living with this person for maybe, or this thing for maybe, this alien for maybe like 5 minutes. And he's already kind of annoyed. I think that's kind of funny. So anyway, they've now been between locations where they were in orbit around Tau Ceti to the third planet where they know that the astrophage refuels from, multiplies from. They're almost there. They're like a day away. They've been in the ship for 10 days, so now they're close enough to see what the atmosphere looks like. And Ryland runs his instruments and he sees that, you know, it's mostly CO2, which is kind of obvious, but that it's 7% methane. Methane's interesting, right? Because methane is a byproduct of organic growth. You know, like Mars doesn't necessarily have a ton of methane, but this planet does. So Ryland is talking about this. He sees the percentages. There's a lot of methane on the planet. And then he also sees that the planet is green and it's beautiful. And this is the first time Ryland has been to another planet other than Earth, we assume. And Rocky is jealous. I often think about this, right? I do. And it's maybe my ADHD brain. But I often think about, what if there was a sixth sense that someone is describing to you, and the way they're describing it is so attractive that you wish you had it. Ryland is doing that to Rocky right now. I wish Rocky had eyes so he could see what Ryland is seeing. I know I have eyes, and sometimes I see some of the most gorgeous things, and not having that capability would be terrible. But Ryland conveys that just under a day they're just there. They've been in orbit for about a day. And Rocky asks how they're going to catch the astrophage, or how they're going to retrieve the astrophage from the tool that's on the outside of the Hail Mary. And Ryland says, I have to go and get in a suit and go get it and retrieve it by hand. Rocky thinks that's kind of strange. They never thought of making suits. They never thought they would need to go out into space. Pretty interesting culture clash here. And he says that humans are crazy for thinking this. We then get a flashback. And this is maybe my favorite flashback because it's just funny. It's full on goofy humor. But Ryland is testing some of the tools that they would need in the lab in the underwater tank that NASA has, where they can put a full space station. It's a massive pool. And he's in the EVA suit and he's using the tools. He messes something up. One of the engineers who works on those tools, instruments we'll call him, says, we'll fix it. So Ryland tells him to let us out of the pool. He gets out of the pool. Someone comes to Ryland and says, you're needed. It's time to do some training for Dr. Shapiro and Dr. Dubois. He gets out of the EVA suit and he walks over he walks over to the classroom because they've got only so much time for them to train in some of this information. And so he walks over and he comments how much he likes being at NASA, and he gets to the classroom and both of them are set up in the classroom. Dubois fancy and straightforward and, buttoned up, and Shapiro stuff's all over the place. Shapiro's gone, not in the room, but Dubois in there. And Dubois says that he's happy to see him. The funny part is that Ryland says, you can just call me Ryland. You don't have to call me Dr. Grace. And Dubois is like, no, I'd rather you call me Dr. Dubois. That is my name. It's like, oh, boy. But then, literally, in the next phrase, Dr. Dubois says, by the way, Annie and I, or Dr. Shapiro and I, are having a sexual relationship. And he's pretty graphic and kind of funny about it. I think he's proud. He's got to be proud, right? He's got to be some nerd who's like, it is very fun to have this kind of relationship with someone. And I have to tell you, when I read his text, his dialogue, to me, it sounds like Giancarlo Esposito, the character from The Mandalorian and a bunch of other stuff, the villain from The Mandalorian. And that's what it sounds like. I read it and I hear Giancarlo Esposito's voice. I don't think he's in the movie, but that's what I hear when he's like, it's quite pleasurable. It's awesome. Awesome. After they have this conversation that's a little graphic, Annie stumbles into the room and they continue with the conversation saying, oh yeah, we have nothing to hide. By the way, like, they've both been tested vigorously. She's on the pill, so he even says, I don't have to wear a condom, doctor. Like, it's so uncomfortable and kind of fun. And then Ryland starts teaching them about mitochondria, and Annie interrupts him, and Annie's like, Dr. Dubois, we have 15 minutes of private time in between now and our next thing. Would you like to hook up in the bathroom? Dubois is like, yep. But in his way, that would be agreeable. And Ryland says, okay, wait a minute. Do you call her Dr. Shapiro when you guys are hooking up? And he's like, yes, that is her name. So funny to me. And Ryland's like, I should have asked. That's on me. Anyways, going back to mitochondria. Anyway, it flash forwards to the present. And Ryland is grateful for Rocky's math because at this point they're in orbit around the planet, around Adrian. And Ryland is amazed that he gets to see another planet and how beautiful the green is. And he wishes he had a lander to go land on the planet, but he knows that would probably kill him. But even still, he'd like to go do it. And in the meantime, Rocky has created this tool that kind of looks like a projectile weapon, a gun. And it kind of shows him what colors look like per their rigidness. I don't know how else to describe it. They do a better job in the book. It's in chapter 17. But he says the planet is green. And Rocky says, oh, it looks like a middle rough. And Ryland, being the science teacher and who he is, he knows that that's what the frequency is. It's middle rough. And so that's a cute little back and forth. So they do the orbit. Ryland jumps into the EVA suit, goes out. He scrapes both sides of this thing because, there's astrophage coming and going. And that's what they need. Both. He brings it back inside. And they go into the lab. And after starting the centrifuge, obviously they have to get back to 1 gravity. And after some tests, Ryland notices that there's just as much heat coming off of the going as there is coming, right? And we know from there should be more going back to the sun than coming to the planet, right? There should be more. It should double, right? Based on the tests that they have, but it's the same amount. But when Ryland looks under a microscope and looks at it, it's funny, they have a little microscope conversation too, because Rocky has no idea what that is. When Ryland looks under the microscope, he sees all these other organisms that aren't astrophage. Meaning that's where the methane comes from. And Rocky deduces that these other organisms are the predators of astrophage. And so now they have evidence of astrophage getting eaten or being destroyed by something else that's on this planet. They'll be able to find out what that is. And they both kind of celebrate because now they know that astrophage has a predator. And that's the end of chapter 17. So we're coming up to the end here. A couple of things. It looks like Strat's concern about relationships might be a problem. We don't know yet. I imagine those things were talked about at length before. It's interesting that they're both going on a suicide mission and they're both like, yeah, we're good. We can do it. That's like the most immature thing two of the most mature adults possible can do. And Shapiro is, granted, she's not like labeled, or the imagery in the book isn't that she's the most mature. But anyway, that's a whole storyline that's brewing. Very interesting. I'm sure it'll come to a head pretty soon. Probably soon. Then the other thing that is they have found these other microorganisms that they can use to counteract the astrophage. It still hasn't gotten worse yet. Right? We're still too early for this to be a win. This is the biggest win chapter, I think. If you're a reader, this is the fun one. This is the chapter because it's funny and it's interesting. It's silly. There's a lot of humanity and personality in this chapter. Not a lot of neutrinos and science. But yeah, this is good. This is a good chapter. I don't think it's going to get better. I think it's going to get worse. Because we've got to know how Ryland also gets on the ship. Right? Something happens to these two people, Dubois and Shapiro. And there's something about this sample that's not going to work out. I don't know what it is. But they're not just going to go home now. So, we'll see what happens in chapter 18. And it'll be out tomorrow, which is great. So, if you like this comment, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to follow along, once again, check out the Amazon link in the description. Buy something. If you don't want to buy Amazon, if you don't want to buy a book, buy toilet paper or other things. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, I think that'll be it for me. Thank you for watching, and later, taters.